Hi, everyone. Welcome to Certified Security Observer webinar series. We're mixing it up a little bit this year. We're going to have some more fun, more of a casual style, but still the great content. And we promise to provide you with the trends and tips that help position you as the most trusted company when it comes to the transfer of not only money, but also these areas of cybersecurity that just become more and more important as the months and years go on. So I'm Tom Cronkright. If we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, this is my buddy and co-founder of Certified, Tyler Adams, and a new face, but certainly not to our team and many of our customers. We're just so excited to use this new format. Also know that as we move forward throughout the months of the year, we're going to have some really exciting special guests that are just experts in their respective fields and domains. So again, promise to have really good content.
So for those of you that have been here before, welcome back. We're proud to say last year we had over 3,000 people attend certified webinars. So thank you very much.
Awesome.
But as Tom mentioned, this year we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to keep the webinar series to 25 minutes or less. It's going to be much more conversational in nature. We're not going to have any slides. And we're going to do some fun giveaways. So you got an opportunity to win a bunch of certified swag.
Yep, all kinds of swag here.
We just ask that you ask a lot of questions, stay engaged. You'll see the Zoom message box where you can put in questions throughout, and then we will be providing some lucky winner at the end of every webinar with some prize or some swag.
Yep, just stay engaged. I mean, we want this to be a dialogue. We're going to hit some really important topics over the next few minutes together. Ping us in that question and redirect however you're thinking about some of these. We can dive deeper into each one of these. So the theme this year is making 2020 the year that you protect and prosper. And what I mean by that is protecting not only the transfer of money in and out of the escrow account, data and concern protect general through these transactions. So today we're going to be it's almost recurring because these touch points that we cover today are going to be major themes that will carry in throughout the year. One, what happened last year in what I call fraud land? So what were the top things that continued to kind of knock on the door in a bad way to us as title and settlement providers or the consumers that you're hired to protect? The insurance landscape changed dramatically. We're going to touch on some of those themes that hopefully you can take back to your insurance advisor, agent, to make sure that you are in fact protected in the way that you think you are. Almost as important, or likely maybe more important, is change in law. So the insurance community, legislation is changing, and it's all around tightening up what we're doing for our data, both physically and digitally, and what happens if there's a breach, right? Fraud protections or predictions for this year, and what I mean by that is what do we think the spillover is going to be from what we saw really heating up last quarter of 2019 that we're going to see in 20, and just how to increase our level of awareness and preparedness going into this year prior to spring market hitting. So before we get started, for those of you that don't know, Certified protects the transfer of money, both in and out of the escrow account. And in doing so, what we've seen time and time again nationally is it just lowers the risk of wire fraud and frankly, social engineering from everyone in the transaction, both through awareness and the technology and the delivery. It's just a system that is performing so well in real time. And we stand behind our product with our $1 million per wire transfer guarantee.
And don't forget, we're now integrated with Resware, RamQuest, and Vodi, SoftPro Select via Vodi.
Yep.
And even better, we can have you and your team up and running on Certified within an hour of contacting us. This isn't your typical software that you've been accustomed to in the space. We will get you up and running the same day, so don't hesitate to reach out.
So if you're not using us, I mean, that's a good point, and you want to be the company that provides the highest level of protection for money transfer and security, then we should connect. If you're a current customer, just know this, we're only getting started. We have been working our tails off as a team, and we have some other team members in here to move mountains for the industry, and we're excited that I think you're gonna like some releases that are coming out in the next few months.
All right, so let's dig in. Tom, what were the top 3 fraud trends we saw in 2019?
Yeah, so 3 recurring themes, but the number one, again, for the second year in a row, was buyer cash to close. So we had buyer cash to close, mortgage payoffs heated up, and then we saw a new vector because of the refinance little bubble that we had starting midsummer carrying in through fall when rates dipped, were actually the cash out refinance proceeds. So again, buyer cash to close, mortgage payoffs, and refinance proceeds wire kind of carried us into the end of last year.
And of those, which do you think poses the greatest threat kind of moving into 2020?
I think the greatest threat still is to the consumer because, and we talked about this in previous conversations, is there's no muscle memory in real estate.
Right.
So if the average time now is being extended for the stay in a home to 7 to maybe 10 years in some markets, and then you have the new generation of buyers that are carrying us into this next wave, 83 million millennials, then there's just nothing to go back to say this feels different than what is before. Why couldn't I trust this information? And
there's so much information, right? I mean, they're being asked to do so many things throughout that process, and if you've never done it before.
Yeah, and look, I'm a large title agency owner, and you can get lost in just kind of that workflow that, it's, I've got, whatever, 1,000 closings this month, and we've got a pipeline, and then the refinances hit up, and you guys all felt it in the summer. It was a tsunami of work, like literally a tsunami overnight starting in July. And we can't lose sight as an industry that this is someone's life savings, this is a life event. And I think that's what we're going to spend quite a bit of time on this year, is how do we wrap our arms around the consumer that is the most exposed. That's and the concern then for the industry is that if the buyer does lose funds, and we're going to go into some of this stuff, we're all going to get named in the lawsuit. Our next white paper is going to be exactly on point for making this case, if you will. But that's the one I'm most concerned about.
Sure. So knowing that, isn't it true that the insurance landscape is really responding to these trends? And, I guess maybe you should take a minute as a title agency owner to explain what you've seen regarding the E&O policy renewals.
Yeah, so it's the old saying that the industry, and this isn't the title industry, this is more, professional lines and cyber coverage, the global insurance carriers are always 12 to 18 months behind what we're actually seeing in real time. So as many of you know, I own a large agency along with my business partner Lawrence in Michigan, and we went through a very interesting E&O and cyber insurance renewal. We've talked about this, the whole team.
Yeah.
What stood out were really 3 things, and they stood out in a big way. As to the E&O policy, the premiums went up. We saw an increase of, I'm going to say roughly 20% or so. We have had no claims. We haven't had claims in I don't know how long. Okay, so the premiums went up, and you're just seeing more sublimits and conditions precedent where the professional lines carriers really are pivoting away from wire fraud losses.
Yeah.
So we had a very large endorsement for what's called electronic funds transfer. We would know it as the wire fraud endorsement. And that was sublimited down by over 50% for us. So big change there. And premiums went up, right?
Yep.
Cyber was even worse. So the cyber landscape, when it deals with data breach, and if you have any type of fidelity or cyber crime coverage on your cyber, our cyber policy actually doubled.
Didn't you say that it was that they labeled it like a category in distress.
Yeah, so what we learned, and this is not good, is that there have been so many losses around wire fraud, and now if you've been paying attention to either the Alta NICU or October research or any of the industry feeds, they're starting to realize that there is a value to companies or municipalities that have real estate information, right? We've talked about this, like security through obscurity. Well, that's gone now, guys, because they can see that we're holding a ton of data, and the insurance industry, frankly, wants to see a behavioral change at the title insurance or the title industry level. We have to. Yeah.
So I guess this is a good point to kind of go a step further and tell everybody just a little bit about what we're working on at CertifID.
All right. So we're a curious bunch, and when we went through our renewal, we decided.
One way to put it.
We decided to get to work and say, okay, this isn't going to work. One, we can't have these global carriers not insure us at the way that we need to as title industry professionals. So we rolled up our sleeves, and we haven't formally announced this, but we have been in direct connection with Lloyd's to provide additional coverage to title companies that are using CertifID. And we'll have more on this exciting program that we're going to be sharing in the next 30 days to all the customers. And any new customers, you'll be able to benefit from this. But it is specifically centered around if you're using the platform and the messaging and the things that we're trying to educate our customers on, Lloyd's actually recognized that to say, okay, that will mitigate risk.
Right. I mean, you said it best where you kind of explained it as like Lloyd's is going to recognize not all companies are made the same, right? And the companies that start to prove that they are taking extra precautions are going to be rewarded for that.
Yeah. And I think I want to pick up on that because, guys, that's a theme where we have this protect and prosper. The companies that are leaning in and really doing the work, and this isn't just a certified conversation, this is more of a holistic, like we're adopting the technology, we'll get into this, a process, a procedure, and just kind of giving it a rethink and almost like a V2 of how we're approaching data and money transfer risk are going to be here in 3 to 5 years.
Right.
And I think this is such a big issue that it's going to force more consolidation in the industry than even the recession did. I mean, this is the one. So good point, Tyler.
All right. So looking forward, what are some best practices and laws that our viewers should be aware of in the new year?
Yeah. So I want to touch on a few things. And since I started a tech company, I had to revert to readers. So I'm going to read to you a couple things that stood out. If you're in the title space and you haven't read the most recent 3.0 version of the Alta Best Practices, I'm having our team actually load this into the comments panel right now. You actually need to give this a read. I actually gave it another read last night in preparation for this talk. And I'm just going to pull out a couple pillars that you have to be aware of. Now, why am I saying that? You can say, Alta Schmalta, right? It doesn't, it's more of an aspirational thing, and there's a self-attestation, and I can say I'm best practice compliant, this and that. It's beyond that now, guys, because if you look at the case law, plaintiffs' lawyers are citing these best practices as the industry standard in these specific areas. So we're on notice. And if we can't check the box that we're complying, and you're not using a third party to validate, and Alta has, and so do the underwriters, talk to your state agency manager on who can help you through this. We're going through it right now with Matt Froning and SAFE, but there are others out there that you got to check the box. And it's work. I mean, I'll tell you right now, it's work and expense. But so I want to call out just a couple of those. Best practice pillar 2 deals with adoption and maintaining written procedures and controls for the escrow trust account. So the Alta Best Practice Committee, and I think did a great job of saying, okay, let's beef this up a little bit. One that didn't change was escrow account reconciliation. If you're not using, Dick and Rhino and their team and Matt, I mean, you guys got to connect with them because that is a no-brainer solution that can automate that process. The other is positive pay and reverse positive pay. If you're not using a financial institution, if you're using a financial institution that doesn't offer positive pay, then you have to move financial institutions, right? Talk to Tom Linehan at Bank United or whoever in your market, but I mean, they have great technology. And then this was the big one. So at the end of the new second pillar, a written wire transfer procedure is in place and tested at least annually. For outgoing transfers, a procedure to verify the instructions. For incoming wire transfers, that includes alerting consumers, right? And then a written response plan. So Alta has the rapid response plan. You can find our white paper when minutes matter on our website. But guys, these are the types of things that are non-negotiable. And then Pillar 3, just quickly, really look at Pillar 3 because Pillar 3 blends into the Model Act from the NAIC around data security. And Pillar 3 is adopt and maintain a written policy and information security plan to protect non-public personal information, otherwise known as PII. And that, I mean, again, I won't read it to you here, but you can see my highlighting. I mean, there's some really important things that you're going to have to be responsible for. That's both on network security and digital information and how we store physical files, okay? So that's Alta.
Sure. Why don't you give them 30 seconds on state on data privacy?
We're loading up a couple things. I'm loading up a link to a data privacy monitor. Baker Hostetler did a really good job, and it's basically a dashboard that goes state by state. So if you think about New York, South Carolina, California's CCPA that we're hearing a lot about, Michigan has one. Where I would go with this, if you're not certain, contact your local land title association state representative and ask them about any proposed or pending legislation that's going to go into effect into your state. And then the last link is simply being aware of the NAIC Model Data Security Act, and we're going to load that up for you because directionally this is the beacon that you're going to need to be aware of. There's many states that have adopted it, and the feds have actually urged adoption at the statewide level, that they look at the NAIC Model Act as kind of the starting point for, for the conversation. So hopefully that's helpful, guys, but this is big stuff. Like, there's one thing to say, hey, I'm involved in a lawsuit because there was a loss. There's another thing for the insurance commissioners to lay in. I mean, I understand South Carolina, or one of the Carolinas, it could be a disbarable offense.
Wow.
If you're not taking care of business in this way right now.
Wow. All right, let's have a little fun. Let's make some predictions for 2020. So, Tom, what's one of your big predictions for the year?
The big prediction, I think the biggest prediction for this year is that fraudsters are going to be more aggressive and they're going to be more brazen. And if you look at, if you just do a search for cyber predictions 2020, there's a common theme. Social engineering is not going anywhere. Yeah. To your point, there's so much information out there on transactions and transaction participants. I think we're going to see more pitch-perfect messaging, more timely messaging that faces either our employees or faces our customers, the buyers and sellers, that ultimately trick them. I think that's going to be one of the biggest headlines, unfortunately, going into last year. So it's like a hangover that just won't end. It's just year over year. And why? Here's why. All you have to do is trick somebody. So what we're experiencing, we talk about wire fraud, right? We talk about this. This isn't like big high-tech cyber crime. Yeah. This is tricking Tim or tricking Sally, and armed with that information, they're coming in with such accuracy. The ones we saw and helped recover last year were just, they're next level. Yeah, absolutely next level. Yep. How about you? What do you think? I'm doing all the talking here.
Kind of following up on that, I mean, I really do think it's the timing and sophistication of frauds against consumers. So specifically in our space against buyers, I mean, that continues to be a theme that we see over and over and over again. As you're aware, not to tease out another thing that we're working on internally, but I mean, that's been a huge pillar of our product development. Our engineering team is currently working on something specifically to continue to provide additional incentives and coverage for the buyers, because like you mentioned earlier, they're in a situation where there isn't muscle memory. They haven't gone through this before, and no matter how much we talk to them and we help them, there's still a chance they're going to be tricked.
Right. Yeah, totally agree.
Cool.
Totally agree.
Want to give us one more quick one?
I would say another quick one, and not to hark on this too much, but denial of insurance coverage. I think I don't want anybody that's a customer of ours or attending these sessions to be surprised that if you submit a claim because there's a data breach or a wire fraud or whatever happens to be, either because your money left your escrow account or it never arrived from a buyer, you thought you were paying, you know, whatever it happens to be for premium, and all of a sudden you forgot to check one little box in the procedure, you can't document it, and then there's a insurance denial. And all I could say there is, do the dry run with your carrier. Like, get specific on, if this, then is it covered? If this, then is it covered? And make sure you codify that in process and procedure, and you verify that it's being done. I think that's two things this year.
All right, rapid fire. So you might be asking yourself, what can you do to be safe in 2020? Here are the 3 things that we believe you should be considering. So number 1 is to enhance your communication with transaction participants about wire fraud. Communicate early and often about the risks. We talk about it all the time, no matter what you're doing. This is the number 1 thing. The more you're willing to have the conversation, the sooner you have the conversation, the more likely you all are to stay safe.
Yep, I would say improve process as well. Look internally, because we're all, you know, as leaders or managers in the organization, we're only as good as our individual employee understands the risk and is prepared, right, is educated. So look at current process and procedures and make sure that they're syncing right now with the risk. Industry best practice guidance, state law, what are the courts saying, what's the threat vector coming in, and just make sure that you're current. I'll say this, fraudsters are people and they're lazy people. So we talked about this. If you lock the door, put a fence around your house, light it up, chain a couple dogs to the front, they're going to move on to the next house, right? You're not going to be 100% safe, but because I don't think that exists anymore, but I think the companies that continue to look at this as more of a journey and an investment are the ones that they're going to get let off. They're going to go knock on some other door. So,
and I mean, that takes us to number 3, which is adopt new technology. So maybe not everybody wants to have dogs out front, but you can certainly go ahead and invest in email monitoring and better data storage and password management. We're not talking just about CertifID, but there's a lot of different things that you can do out there that are going to help you be more secure as an organization, which is ultimately only going to, as Tom put it, encourage them to go to the next house down the street.
Yep, totally agree.
So we had a couple questions come in. First one was, when will you be integrated with Qualia? We do not currently have a time frame on a Qualia integration, but know that we are in conversations with their teams and will inform you as soon as that becomes available.
Another question, do you have examples of those improved communications that you can share? Yeah, we don't mind after this for everyone that we'll give you some guidance on that. I mean, in our portal, we provide templates and just kind of a head start on how to think about it.
That is a good thing to point out, though. I mean, so one of the benefits of working with CertifID is we do have a complete customer resource portal. So for all of our customers, we actually provide email alerts to buyers and to sellers and to everybody. But as Tom mentioned, if you reach out, we'd be happy to share some of those details with you.
I think the bell ringer around communication is really timing and the quality of the communication. I mean, that's what you're going to be judged on when you're trying to get out of the conversation if the buyer, the challenge with buyers is you don't control their behavior. You're not standing there at the bank while they're getting ready to move the money. So having as early an awareness campaign or something in front of them even if you could get your real estate agents or the lawyer or the lender involved in the deal to kind of prime this awareness for you, because sometimes in title, we might not see the customer for weeks. They could be out looking for a house.
Sure.
We helped with recovery on a gentleman that wired his funds, all of his cash to close, a $600,000 property,
Yeah.
wired over $100,000. The purchase agreement hadn't even been signed because his attorney's email was hacked.
Right.
So early communication, often communication, yes, we can absolutely help you with what that should look like.
Yep. Did we do it? Did we actually pull off a webinar in 25 minutes?
Because you're here, I could never do that. These people were listening to me jabber for 45 to 50 minutes all year last year. No, this is good.
Well, we really hope you enjoyed it. This was fun for us, and we look forward to continuing the webinar series next month. So bring your friends.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Have a good one.